So I'm really delighted that Rachel's able to join us this morning and is going to take us through the first session. So Rachel, I've already taken 15 minutes off your time, so do feel free that we can run that on to 10 o'clock. So we're just with a bit of a late start. So thank you very much, Rachel. I'll hand over to you now. You're on mute, Rachel. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you. I muted myself so I didn't say anything while you were talking. Yes, welcome and thank you very much, Lise, for inviting me along today. I'm just admitting a last few people here. I don't know what's going to happen once my screen is shared, whether I'll still be able to see people. And also, please feel free to write perhaps a question or a comment in the chat if you want to. Very happy for you to stay muted and invisible. I understand it's an early morning and I don't need to see, there's a huge amount of you and I can't see you all anyway. So please feel free to do whatever you need to feel comfortable. I've been made aware that you've experienced your own loss recently with one of your colleagues and you have my deepest sympathy for this. I won't dwell on that because it's possibly not the time or the place to do that, but just know that my thoughts are with you. I might say something at the very end about the kind of support that we can offer you as an organisation individually regarding that. Okay, so what I'll do, I will start by sharing the screen. Can you see the screen? Anyone?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. Okay, so as you know, we are the Wellbeing Academy, and I won't go into huge amounts of detail, but we offer a kind of a suite of services, if you like, with a consortium of counsellors who for your school are providing a school-based counselling for children and young people, counselling for staff and supervision for guidance staff. So it's wonderful. I know very few schools that are offering that, and it's really amazing. I get the opportunity to admit to people as I go. Hold on a minute, there we go, that's someone. So we'll start. So back to school anxiety. You know, we're living in unprecedented times, as they keep saying that lovely word, and the full impact on children's mental health as well as our own is yet to be realised. So you know, whatever we're experiencing is current and still ongoing. So I'm just interested, I've managed to find some interesting statistics about basically what we and our pupils have experienced since lockdown. On a positive note, 72% of families have felt closer during lockdown. 25% of people are not looking forward to returning to normal life. And 30% of people have slept better. I think sleep deprivation and broken sleep are probably some of the biggest causes of stress. Sleep deprivation is the worst, I think, that anyone can go through. So the fact that many of us are sleeping better and have done is good. 26% people feel lockdown had a positive effect on their family's health and well-being. 40% of families spent more time outdoors, and 32% of people are exercising more. So these are the positives, but there are also negatives. Parents have said that only 13% of children were better behaved during this time. 23% of families said there was less arguments, which means that there were more arguments happening. And 58% of people are looking forward to lockdown being over. So there's lots of mixed messages, there's lots of mixed feelings. Some people have experienced lockdown to be a very positive experience and some people very negative. I am very much aware, working with schools, that there's two sectors that seem to have had the spotlight on them during this time. One is the NHS, for obvious reasons, and the other is education, not helped by recent events. But it feels to me as if the spotlight still remains upon you and will do for some time to come. And the pressure of that, I've worked from home, my husband has worked from home, other colleagues have worked from home, and the rest of the world doesn't really care what we've been up to, but they do about what you've been up to, and what you have done and what you haven't done. And I'm very much aware also that your clients are your, the families, the parents, and you have their expectations to meet as well. So you've had a very demanding time, and what seems like a really short time to recover from all of that. Your holiday period has been cut short, so your time to recover, your time to really experience all the things that I've just told you about that other people have experienced, about the wonderful family times and all of that kind of stuff has passed you by perhaps, and you're left with, gosh, it's gone so quickly and I feel like I'm still getting over all of that, the work that we had to achieve during that time. So I'm thinking about what resilience really, and resilient factors, and it's established that there are 7 resilient factors for both children, which is this one here, and adults. So where children might have a resilient factor of a parent, we might have a partner. So all of these things are considered to be really, really important. And if you think about it for yourselves, if your resilient factors, and you only need 3, you don't need all 7. We only need 3 resilient factors in order to have resilience. Oh, 6 people are waiting. Sorry, I'm just going to take a quick pause while I let these people in. Hi, everybody. Okay, I think that's everyone. So, and if, for example, your resilient factors were work, friends, and family, for example, these things have been taken away from you. The same with children, peer, skill and education are often the 3 big ones for children. Yes, parents and family are up there, but the next ones are often these 3. And so if the factors that you've used to keep your life positive, keep you buoyant, help you to deal with life have been taken away from you, your resilience factors are very low, your ability to cope is quite low. So hopefully we'll start to regain some of these things back again. But it's just interesting to have a look at these and to think about, okay, so maybe I'm not able to do my skill, I'm not able to do my sport at the moment. What other things can I bolster during this time? Colleagues, certainly at the moment, you can see more of family now, those sorts of things, and begin to think about that in the terms of your pupils as well. What are the things that they were using to keep them held up, if you like, and are perhaps missing at the moment? What other areas can we draw from? Okay, so as I've said, feelings have been mixed. It's been uncertain, there's been confusion, frustration, fear, and just in terms of, what goes on in a household, because you're not a separate entity. You are teachers, but you are also parents and husbands and wives and, children as well, and aunties and uncles and all of those kinds of things. And, so how the family as a whole has been coping or not coping. So in terms of the negative things, there's been an increase in domestic violence around, as we know. We'll see more of that as lockdown lifts a bit more. Parents fighting, family conflict is around. Confusion about jobs and what that means, and particularly for children. And that might impact, a child that is aware that their family is making a financial sacrifice in order to send them to your school. And maybe one parent's job is a little bit unsafe at the moment. That has a massive impact. Some children have had additional responsibilities, sibling responsibilities of care, because parents are still working. Scared for parents who are key workers. Worried about an elderly relative in residential care. That's been an ongoing thing. And lastly, the death of a family member or a friend. So these are really important things that we've had to deal with and we've had to face. But there are the alternatives to that, and some people have had a tremendous sense of relief, freedom, fun that's gone on around this. So busy and absent parents who are around all the time. So that's really important. But you've been around doing your job with your children as well, which is an added factor. Families doing more together. Academic pressures reduced for some who maybe see going into school and keeping up with things as a source of their anxiety. Peer conflicts have gone, late nights and late mornings, that's been quite nice. Turning night into day, not having to worry about getting up in the morning. And for children, one-to-one attention during homeschooling, that's something that I've said to parents all along is, you know, don't get your knickers in a twist about the homeschooling. You know, our children are used to being in a classroom full of 30 children, perhaps more in some schools, and they, you know, 15 of which may not be engaged with what's going on. And what you're able to achieve in a few hours of the day is possibly more than is able to be achieved in some classrooms in a week. So, you know, I think that there was an awful lot of anxiety that was going around about how much that needed to be achieved in a week. And there's a cocooned and safe bubble that we've all been in that's felt very safe. And at the moment, you know, particularly when, you know, we can't go into certain shops, we can't go into, certainly the events are not happening, and, you know, big kind of events where lots of numbers, lots of people together is not happening, that suddenly, oh, it's okay for hundreds of children to congregate in a building. And I, you know, was hearing there about how you're going to manage that and keeping everybody safe and at a socially distance and keeping everything clean and keeping everything wiped down. And, you know, that's an added thing to your day that's going to cause delays, that's going to cause a lack of fluidity among your day. So all of these things that are around at the moment. Okay. Why is nothing not moving on? There we go. Stuck there. More statistics. 65% of children have felt bored and isolated during this time. 25% of children are dealing with anxiety. Now, that figure doesn't change. That's always been the figure. The next figures are the important ones. 49% of children feel worried and 34% feel scared. And I think that translates to adults as well. It's this sense of, because what will worry become? Worry becomes anxiety. Scared, fear can become an anxiety disorder, and we'll look at those a little bit in a minute. So these are the things, those people that weren't worried, people that kind of dealt with life as it came, glass half full type of people, not, you know, not your natural worriers. They have now started to become the worriers along with those who have anxiety. So these are the things that we need to be mindful of and take into account for yourself as well. Just, you know, things in terms of, you know, I never used to worry about these sorts of things before. I never used to jump in the car, or I just used to have to think about where I'm going and what I'm doing. You know, all of these kinds of things are really, really important. And 20% of children worry about their future. We saw, you know, what young people face the last few days in terms of their exam results and exam in inverted commas. And that is a worry for our future. I was put on the news this morning and I discovered that, for no surprise, that we've entered the biggest recession in history, and that was expected. And what does that mean for us all? There's mixed feelings when returning to school. I felt calm during lockdown, and now I'm anxious, you know, because I know from the clients that I work with, the anxious clients that I work with, they've been, I'm fine, Rachel, I don't need to see you, I'm doing fine, the anxiety has lifted, and now as the return to work, return to school comes in, the anxieties returned with force as well, because it's not only the old anxieties, there's new anxieties as well. And there's a confusion for children as well about, you know, why are the adults in danger but we aren't? And can I infect my parents when I go back? You'll be thinking the same. Can I, you know, what does this mean for me as the rest of my family members that I've started seeing? We've been told we can. Older family members, does that mean that needs to change? So there's lots of questions and things that you're going to have to make decisions about. So let's think about the behavioural symptoms of anxiety. Now, these are general symptoms that you would get without this situation, okay? And they're interesting. So avoiding the world and becoming reclusive, developing obsessive habits like hand washing, rejecting offers to socialise, developing self-harming behaviours, and a loss of confidence. And I'm just thinking, you know, think to yourself the sorts of things. It's no surprise that, or coincidence, that we're now being enticed to go out to restaurants on a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, because people are not flooding out their doors to go and socialise, because we're still nervous, and we're avoiding the world again, the world that we lived and worked freely in, because there's a sense that it's unsafe. And there's this word, stay safe, that's been passed around all the time. And there's a sense that some kind of zombie apocalypse is happening outside our doors. And, you know, we need to reclaim some things as well, obviously needing to use common sense and intelligence along the way, and advice that's given. But, you know, there's a definite sense. I don't know if any of you are still at home, or you've all come into work, and how you felt walking through the doors yesterday, how you felt entering your classroom, a different feeling than you would have normally had. We've all been told to hand wash like crazy. People with obsessive compulsive disorders, you know, are not, we've heard the stats are beginning to say, have not become worse, thankfully. But actually, those of us who weren't obsessive, perhaps we've become that way. So we need to be mindful of that. Yes, wash your hands, but it's, you know, don't let it take over. Don't let it become an obsession with you. Rejecting offers to socialize. It's like, oh, we can't all, you know, we can only go out for a couple of hours, and, you know, how do we get there? How do we return? It's just so difficult. So these are the things that, you know, you might not have said you were an anxious person in the past, but the sorts of things that we've been encouraged to do, stay indoors, don't go out, wash your hands, you know, very much reflect what it looks like, what anxiety looks like, just without the physical symptoms. And now the physical symptoms are starting to happen as we start to go back to work. So, you know, be mindful of these, and I'll give you some techniques to help you later on, you know, address the physical symptoms that you might be experiencing. So what are these physical symptoms? Constant worry and fear. This is normal, the normal stuff. So the constant worry and fear, often without reason. So worrying about something that might happen or might not happen is a classic anxiety response. Panic attacks, nausea, breathlessness, headaches, hopelessness, helplessness. What's the point? And suddenly being tearful and angry. That's the classic normal things about anxiety. Again, the parallels. There's a reason now, you know. And again, you know, for people who are normally anxious, the worst has happened. You know, the thing that we've, you know, you sort of fear, this catastrophizing world that an anxious person might live in. Well, do you know what? It's happened, and we've survived it. We're surviving it. Most of us are, and we found ways to stay safe and so, you know, the panic attacks and nausea and breathlessness, these things might start to come into life, going back out into the world, having to wear a mask. We're told it doesn't impeach any of the oxygen getting into our brains and into our lungs. So that's important, and that's crucial. But also, you know, that feeling of heat, it's boiling, there's no air. And just that kind of, just wearing a mask might induce a panic attack. So, you know, things to be mindful of. And when your face is covered, you know, looking at colleagues, looking at children, looking at people out in the street or whatever, I don't know how you'll be wearing masks and whether you will or you won't. For those of you who are, be mindful that the eyes don't always tell you what your facial expressions, and we'll miss that. So when someone is struggling and hyperventilating or being breathless or having a panic attack, it might not be obvious when you've got a mask on. Okay, so there's a little bit of neuroscience I just wanted to touch on around anxiety that I think is really important. Obviously, this is the brain. This is here, if you can see the orange part of the brain, this is what's called the primitive brain, and it's connected to the brain stem. This is the seat of fight and flight, freeze and faint. This is every animal who's got a brain has this part of the brain. That's what it's called, the sort of reptilian primitive part of the brain. And it's very basic. You know, where am I going to get my food from? Where am I going to get my shelter? How do I survive? Okay, so that's and then the brain has been built. Our human brain is built on top of that. The next part of the brain. So from birth, we have the whole brain, but what neuroscientists refer to as coming online, areas that come online take up to 25 years. So this is the next bit to come online, which is the limbic system. And this is the area of emotion and feeling, memories, that kind of stuff. So in childhood, children are kind of dealing with just this area here. So they're pure emotion. They're learning new things, but this whole area here is not come online, is not filled. So this prefrontal cortex is called the executive brain. And this is the area where we get all our learning or our logic and our reasoning. So what happens is a term that Dan Siegel calls you flip your lid. So this part, so when we become anxious, we disconnect, the brain disconnects from particularly this area of the brain, because when we're in danger, we don't need to recite a poem or remember a math formulation. We just need to know how to survive. And that's why it's so difficult, you know, in exams or in interviews or any of these sorts of things, because when our prefrontal cortex, our executive brain, is disconnected because of anxiety, because of the fight-flight mechanism, we are pure emotion and pure survival. So we're looking at how we reconnect the brain up, and that's the most important thing. So for yourselves, we'll go into that. It's things like breathing, things that we can do that help us, and I'll send you out a fact sheet that'll help you with different things that you can do to help you to settle and you to get your brain, your executive brain, the part of you that says it's going to be okay, we've survived this before, or you know, I can deal with this, we've got this. That part of the brain can reconnect to calm down the fight and flight. So fight, flight is and freeze and faint are the four responses to fear and stress and anxiety. So fight, flight are the first two. They're the ones that we know, and we engage the fight, flight system when we know that we can survive something. So, you know, back in the day, a bear was running towards us in the distance, and we thought, I could probably outrun that bear, or I could run up a tree. Fight, flight mechanism kicks in, and we go for it. The freeze and faint mechanism only kicks in when our life is in danger, and we don't think we can survive, and we play dead, or we freeze in the hope that whatever it is passes us by. And that's difficult when, you know, so be mindful about what you are experiencing. You know, there isn't a bear and there isn't a gun, but sometimes it feels like there is. And so, you know, what is the bear? And for some people, it's, you know, leaving the house, it's getting in a car, the dangers that you see. And this mechanism is a very primitive one. It doesn't understand the difference, and it will have a bodily reaction, which I'll also go into in a minute. So this is a kind of really simplistic term to use, but this is to help you to kind of understand when you're in this and you're acting irrationally and you're thinking catastrophizing thoughts, and you see those around you doing the same. You need to reconnect the brain so that you can be calm. Okay, so some of the things that you might see, I thought I'd touch on this because I think anxiety, now kind of spanning your anxiety and preparing you, but also I want to prepare you for what you might see in the children that come your way. So over the next week or so, And separation anxiety, more common in children. Typical characteristics of separation anxiety, because don't forget the primary caregiver is always the attachment figure, but more so at the minute, and there's possibly been a bit of regression in the younger children as well. So they're unable to do the things they used to do. So a confident child may now become an anxious, withdrawn child. They will try and control their environment, ask to go home or see a parent, feeling they or others are unclean or dangerous because they must wear a mask, scared at leaving a parent who has been there constant, as I said, and loss of previous autonomy, so some regression. So a confident wee soul may actually be somebody who is started to become clingy. And if they haven't got their primary caregiver, their attachment figure with them during the day, they are then going to start attaching to somebody else. And their safe adult, who might be you, they might become much more clingy. And that might be difficult for you because you have to keep socially distanced, you're dealing with your own anxiety, you're wondering, how can I respond to this child? How am I dealing with what's going on in my own mind? So this can be another cause of anxiety. And for this type of child, the world is scary, okay? And then we move on to social anxiety or social phobia, which is more common in adolescents. And, you know, they've not been socializing. They've not been socialized. So a really confident teenage girl who's Mrs. Popular has not had the social contact that she's used to. And so maybe she's gone back into herself as well. More embarrassment, worried about the contribution in social situations, you know, just in the playground or whatever might be happening. There's kind of like, what can and can't we do? I'm not used to speaking out and speaking up. Paranoia about people judging them negatively, as if that's not bad enough for teenagers. Scared of the expectation to perform in front of a class or a school. Avoid being the center of attention. Dread looking stupid. Everything's a threat. And I'm aware that this is something, you know, if we then go through this and think about yourselves, you're going to be up in front of the class. Everyone's looking at you. Again, something that you used to take in your stride once upon a time, it's now relearning all of that. It might be that, oh, you might be somebody who, as soon as you open your mouth, I'm back, it's fine. But just be aware that your own anxiety might cause you to avoid wanting to be the one that's standing up in front of the kids teaching again. So because that's not happened for so long. Panic attacks, characteristics of those are trembling and shaking, racing or pounding heart, dizziness or lightheadedness, fear of dying, losing control or losing your mind. I'm out of my mind, I've lost it. Shortness of breath, a feeling of being smothered. Again, aware of that, panic attacks when wearing a mask. Intense fear. The world seems unreal. And you're very much out of control. These three things, oh, I've got one more, sorry. Phobias, of course. Now, phobias in the past were often an irrational fear, but we've been given this image of this coronavirus, which looks like a little alien that's coming to get us. And, you know, so it's not so irrational anymore. And a phobia is a difficult thing to deal with. You avoid situations where you have to confront that fear. School, you know, these are the places where we've been avoiding having to have these contacts with people who might have the dreaded virus. So, you know, I'm aware that this, you know, if these sorts of things are going on in your mind and you're thinking, I'm the only one who's thinking this, I shouldn't be thinking this, it is normal. This is all completely normal. The belief that the fear is real, it manifests as crying, tantrums, clinging, headaches, stomach aches, those sorts of fears, the fight flight. So those phobias and fears are the things that activate the fight flight mechanism that causes the flipping of the lid, deactivates from the prefrontal cortex. And you know, the sorts of things that we need to be aware of, and you need to be aware of in yourselves. So it's all doom and gloom at the minute. March's child or young person may not be August's child. It occurred to me the other day, and you might not be the same. You know, March's teacher may not be August's teacher. And in both ways, you might get some children who were extremely anxious before all of this and have found a new lease of life, and the opposite for others. So what I want to encourage you to do as teachers is to avoid statements like "you used to." You used to be able to do that. You used to be able to. You used to know that off by heart. You used to be really confident. You used to be able to. And things like, that's not like you. It's not like you to be nervous. It's not like you to be shy. It's not like you to begin with. And maybe replace it with, I remember when you got up and you did that and it was fun. Remember how you felt? Let's remember that. How did you feel when you did that? You felt amazing, didn't you? And I look forward to the day when you can do this again. So maybe to reframe some things and, you know, let yourself off the hook. I used to be able to just do this. I used to be able to, you know, it's not like me to feel like this. It's not like me. Let yourself off the hook. Yes, remember, okay, remember the times, you know, I remember that time. It was good and I enjoyed it. I actually, you know, thrived on that kind of thing. And, you know, and I am looking forward to getting that back, that part of me back. We do when there's a critical incident, you know, for example, I don't know, a plane crash or whatever, there's something that's called a critical incident stress debrief, it's called. You won't be getting one of those. But what's important, the most important thing that we say in the time of trauma, when something's happened, and trauma is just about something that's happened that's broken into your life, that's unusual, that's difficult, that's out of the ordinary, is that however you deal with that, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're doing in response to that is completely normal. What's happened is abnormal. So that's the abnormal thing, not you. And I think that's really important for you to remember over the next few days and weeks is, you know, this breathlessness I'm feeling, this, you know, my heart beating, my nervousness, my avoidance, my resentment, my resistance. It's all normal. It's all completely normal because what's happened and what is happening still is the abnormal thing. Okay, so let's look at breathing. Breathing is one of the things that they all say, oh, you must breathe and take deep breaths and all that kind of stuff. But it's the quality, it's a type of breath. And this is a really, really, really important. It's all about the outward breath, okay? Breathing in is linked to the sympathetic nervous system, which controls fight flight, okay? It increases the response rates of the essential organs and decreases the activity of the non-essential, what it considers to be non-essential. So it's not only happening in your brain, it's happening in your body. So it increases heart rate. It causes your digestion to become inactive because it doesn't see that as important, and it relaxes the bladder for obvious reasons. So if you're constantly in a state of anxiety, and let's think about this, whenever you get a fright, what happens? Whenever you have to go and do something, right, are you ready? I'm ready. You take an intake of breath because what you're telling your body is, get my organs ready for something that's difficult, for something that I have to overcome. And there's the intake of breath. So when they say breathe, right, take a big, deep intake of breath and hold, don't be holding it. Because your system's going, I'm ready, and it's shut down. This is why we get stomach problems and all, because we are breathing in. And when we're in a state of panic, we do that kind of in breath all the time. But exhaling is linked to the parasympathetic nervous system, which does the opposite. It helps the body to relax and calm down. So it decreases the heart rate. It gets the digestion and all of the systems working and flowing again, the internal organs working, and it causes you to, it tightens up the bladder. But, you know, it does all of the things that help you to relax and calm down. So my suggestion is, before you take a big, deep breath, try to exhale as much as you can. So your heart rate, and just go push all of the air out of your lungs as much as you can. And then allow the body to take its natural breath in, because your first thing, when you breathe in activates all the get ready for it systems, and then you calm. But if you start with a exhale, you're starting calm, and then you can breathe in. Next, try spending a bit longer exhaling than inhaling. When I do some running, and I tend to run with a, because you're breathing, you're wanting to get oxygen into the body. But this is saying do less, so it's 1 in and almost 2 out. And that helps to calm things down, reconnect the brain, and in using breathing more effectively, okay? The other thing is sort of reality checks. Our brain, again, is constantly doing risk assessments and will allow us to, our minds to wander, go off in different tangents, and we'll daydream away. So it's a good thing to maybe be saying to each other randomly, and maybe even you might adapt it for children as well, but it's the question of what you're thinking about. And you know, just to stop somebody and say, what are you thinking about? What are you thinking about right now? What are you thinking about? What are you worrying about right now? And what that does, they don't have to respond. You're not interested in the answer to that, because it's none of our business what they're thinking about. But it cuts into the thought process. It causes you to become conscious, which then again connects you to your thinking part of your brain. What am I thinking about? What is my brain doing? Yeah, what am I worrying about? Good question. And then to say, do you need to be thinking about that right now? Do you need to be worrying about that right now? Is that taking up space in your head? Is that causing your internal bodily systems to activate in a way that is going to, you know, be detrimental to you? And it's something that's just worth asking yourself, what am I thinking about? Why am I thinking about that right now? I don't need to be thinking about that right now. And the other one is, what are you feeling? What are you feeling? What's your feeling right now? What are you feeling about? What are you feeling like right now? Again, you don't need the answer unless you're asking yourself, but it helps you to become more aware of your feelings and identify your feelings. Do I need to be feeling like this right now? Is this essential for me to be feeling? It's much more difficult to stop feeling a certain way, but if you're thinking about, do you know what, my heart rate's going, I am anxious, I don't need to be anxious, I haven't got time for it, I don't need to be anxious, and actually I need to be calm, and I want to be calm because this is causing me to have indigestion, heartburn, headaches, whatever's going on, and you know, I don't need that. I'm going to breathe, I'm going to, you know, try and reconnect my brain, I'll do this and be mindful. So that's the kind of key things that I'm wanting to bring home to you is, you know, what's happening in your brain, how you can breathe properly to help your brain reconnect, what you can think about that again helps your brain to reconnect so that you're not in that fight, flight, anxious place, that you're in a more rational place and you're able to say, do you know what, this is all normal. What's happening is abnormal, but I'm going to find a normality and I'm going to find my path through this. Okay, so thank you. Remember to look after yourself. Please look up our Wellbeing Academy website if you want to find out the sorts of things that you can access in terms of counselling. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Isn't that terrible? We're on Facebook and Instagram. But more importantly, going back to, you know, we are here for you. I am here for you. So if you are finding that you are overwhelmed for whatever reason, your own life and your own circumstances are yours, and the school is here to help and it wants to support you. So here is my email address and my mobile telephone number. No one in the school will ever know that you've contacted me, and you have 6 counselling sessions available to you completely free, and the school will pay for those. We also want to offer, and we'll maybe work this out, more sort of well-being check-ins as well, even just a half an hour, just to check in with somebody, get, you know, ground yourself, just to talk through the day, just might be half an hour, you know, to be able to do that as well. So don't suffer alone. Obviously, you have your colleagues who are your friends. Sometimes it's difficult to support each other when you're experiencing the same thing. Sometimes it's better to help someone else because it deflects away from your own anxieties when you're focusing on someone else. So, you know, find space if you can to connect with each other. Connection's really important. But if you want some confidential help from qualified counsellors, it's there for you. So that's me. I am at the end of my presentation to you. And I don't know, we've got like 2 minutes. I kept it under till 10 o'clock. I hope that was helpful. Lise, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. I wonder whether there are any questions that anyone would like to ask, you know, from a sort of a whole school or sort of, you know, as a more general point of view. Any clarification that anyone would like to just get from Rachel, if there's any general questions at all. I see the chat, there's nothing in the chat, but just to give you know, the opportunity for colleagues to ask Rachel any questions. It's like teaching a class.
They've all gone off, they're not really there.
Yeah, no, they are there, they definitely are.
I know.
So I just really want to thank you, Rachel. I know personally just how helpful you've been, and that's something that I just would want to recommend to all the staff. I think one of the things which I've learned over the years, and you know, so not just from a school perspective, but also, you know, from home situation and you know, the children, is that it is not a weakness to reach out for help. Quite the reverse, actually. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that is actually the sign of strength, and you know, recognizing that you maybe need some help is something that's really important. And putting aside, sometimes we feel that we should be able to cope. You know, that there's a sort of self-criticism in there. You know, what's wrong with me that I can't cope with this? Yeah. And I think it's a really powerful thing to just recognize that it's a sense of self-awareness when you put your hand up and say, look, actually I need to have someone to reflect what I'm feeling and help me find the things that work for me.
Absolutely.
You know, to manage things for myself. It's not somebody, you're not handing over the thing to someone else, not at all. It's just a facilitation of you being able to find the strategies that work for you. So I just would recommend, you know, your service in the highest terms, actually, to all the staff. Obviously, you know, you do an amazing job for our young people, but I think probably that the service for staff is underutilized, and I think that, you know, we need to be, in this current climate, probably more than anything else, we need to be, you know, so taking responsibility for our own well-being and seeking out that help. Again, I know only too well what you say about the fact that helping someone else is you know, you feel